Testing, testing, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, testing, testing. Hello, 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 hello. Hello, hello, 1, 2, 3. Oh, thank you very much. I should do this over the mic. Oh yeah, it works. Ladies and gentlemen, Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, we are about to start now. The guest of honor has arrived, so I think we should do a little bit of logistics. For those who have got their tablets, phones, and smartphones and laptops, we have got Wi-Fi in the room. So if you go into the Wi-Fi, all you need to do is put in the password Hayat2018. If capital letters do not work, try small letters, but capital letters should work. The powder room is, if you go outside the door, turn right up the steps, to the left is where you find the powder room. We have So as I say, the guest of honor has arrived. He's being met by our host, that is the ambassador of Sweden and the chairman of ESRF and the executive secretary of ESRF. So I think normally the protocol for that, they give him a quick briefing on what to expect. It will not be good for you to Shanghai him. So, anything else? I've done the necessary, and I've been asked to, as we wait, I can't see the door, but I'm sure they'll tell me when he's walking in. So we're meeting here today, and the room is full of economists. And I thought I should kick off the day by telling you what economists do when they meet mathematicians. So, there were 3 economists and 3 mathematicians. They were going on a trip by train. Before the journey, the mathematicians bought 3 tickets, but the economists only bought 1 ticket. The mathematicians were glad their colleagues were going to pay a fine on the train. However, when the conductor was approaching their compartment, all 3 economists went to the nearest toilet. The conductor noticed that someone was in the toilet, knocked on the door. In reply, he saw a hand with 1 ticket, and he checked it, and the economists saved 2/3 of the ticket price. Oh, I have to stop here, sorry. Next time. Honorable Philip Mpango, Minister of Finance and Planning, Professor Adolf Mkenda, Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Foreign Affairs and East African Community, Mr. Philemon Luhanjo, Chairman of the Board of Trustees of ESRF, Her Excellency Katarina Ringat, Ambassador from the Embassy of Sweden, Dr. Tausi Akida, Executive Director for ESRF, Professor Joseph Stiglitz, a Nobel laureate from Columbia University, Professor Kaushik Basu from Cornell University, Professor Sabina Alkire from Oxford University, and recognizing your excellencies who are here, permanent secretaries, director generals, directors, professors, doctors, heads of institutions, captains of industry, distinguished guests, and attendees, the media, and my colleagues, good morning. My name is George Mulamula, and for today, I'm going to be your MC, and my role is to make sure that everything goes smoothly today to the best of our abilities. Honorable guest of honor, I have adapted to the audience here. I cut short a story which I'll continue later on, so you'll get to. But of importance is that equitable growth and human development is important for the health of a nation. When we got our independence, our first president, Mwalimu Nyerere, made sure the state played a major role of providing key social services such as health, education, clean water, and etc. And this is what the fifth government is embarking on. Thus, we meet today under the conference theme, Equitable Growth and Human Development in Resource-Based Economy in Tanzania, Dialogue of Stockholm Statement for Tanzania, which I believe has got 8 pillars. So without further ado, can I please call on Dr. Tausi Kida to give her welcoming remarks? Karibu, Dr. Tausi Kida.
Honorable Dr. Philip Mpango, Minister of Finance and Planning, Her Excellency Katarina Rangnet, Ambassador of Sweden to Tanzania, Professor Adolf Mkenda, Permanent Secretary, Minister of Foreign Affairs and East African Cooperation, Mr. Philemon Luhanjo, Chairman of ESRF Board of Trustees, Professor Joseph Stiglitz, Nobel laureate, Professor, Columbia University, Professor Sabina Alkai, Director of Oxford Poverty and Human Development Initiative, Oxford University, Professor Kaushik Basu, Professor of Economics, Cornell University and former Chief Economist of the World Bank, Excellency Ambassadors and Representative of the International Organization, Representative of the Government of Tanzania, all distinguished scholars and researchers, Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, a very good morning to you all. On behalf of the management and staff of Economic and Social Research Foundation, I would like to take this opportunity to welcome you all to the ESRF 7th Annual Conference, which is being organized jointly by Economic and Social Research Foundation, Embassy of Sweden and Tanzania, and Ministry of Finance and Planning. We at the Economic and Social Research Foundation are very delighted to collaborate with you, Honorable Guest of Honor, and all distinguished guests in this very special occasion. My role this morning is to welcome you, Honorable Guest of Honor, and all distinguished guests, participants to the conference. However, before I do that, kindly allow me to take some few remarks regarding the conference itself. As most of you should be aware, since 2012, Economic and Social Research Foundation have been organizing annual conferences aiming at creating a platform for engaging development stakeholders in the country in discussing and making intellectual contribution to relevant and topical policy issues facing our country. The meeting we are attending today is the 7th in the series of such conferences. We are pleased to inform you that these conferences have become important sources of policy advice to Tanzania development, especially in the policy-making process. Honorable Guest of Honor, it has already been mentioned that the theme of this year's conference is Equitable Growth and Human Development in Resource-Based Economy, Dialogue on the Stockholm Statement for Tanzania. The objective of this conference is to discuss and identify key priorities and recommendations for economic policy choices to support inclusive economic development in Tanzania. To a larger extent, this conference particularly dwells on addressing the subject on how Tanzania can maximize benefit from natural resource endowment for inclusive growth and human development, and learning from the key principles of the Stockholm Statement. Honorable Guest of Honor, the meeting we are attending today is the climax in the series of events which started on Monday and that will be concluded tomorrow. As part of this conference on Monday, 30th April 2018, ESRF, in collaboration with the Swedish Embassy in Tanzania and Tanzania Economic Society and University of Dar es Salaam, conducted a public lecture at Nkrumah Hall The public lecture was targeted academic community and public at large. As part of this conference, also yesterday was a day for field visit to our keynote speakers to engage with planners and executors of some selected development interventions in Tanzania. In this regard, we had an opportunity visiting and interacting with following managers and beneficiaries of projects under TASAF, SIDO in Vingunguti Industrial Park, Financial Sector Deepening Trust, and also manager and agriculture entrepreneurs supported by private agriculture sector supporting program. Tomorrow, Thursday, 3rd of May, a high-level policy dialogue with government officials and development partners is scheduled to take place here at the Hyatt. This meeting is to discuss and take forward in practical terms issues and recommendations emanating from this important conference. Honorable guest of honor, before I conclude my welcoming remarks, I want to once again thank you, Honorable Minister, distinguished dignitaries, and all participants who are joining us in this conference today. In particular, I would like to thank all speakers who will be sharing their wealth of knowledge in this conference, and particularly our keynote speakers, Professor Joseph Stiglitz, Professor Kaushik Basu, Professor Sabina Alkaya. Furthermore, I would also like to recognize some of the dignitaries who have traveled from outside Tanzania to attend this conference. Professor Mark Vaus, Emeritus Professor of Economics, International Institute of Social Studies, Erasmus University, Rotterdam. Dr. Hazel Gray, Senior Lecturer, School of African Studies, Edinburgh University. We also have Professor Fintap, Director, United Nations University, World Institute for Development Research, UN-WIDER. Lastly, honorable guest of honor, I would like also to extend our gratitude to the Embassy of Sweden, and in particular Her Excellency Katarina Rangnet, Ambassador of Sweden to Tanzania, for partnering with us and also for supporting this conference. Asante sana. And last but not least, I would like to extend my sincere gratitude to the management and my fellow staff at ESRIF, and also staff of Embassy of Sweden, particularly True, I don't know where is True, and Charlotte, who have worked tirelessly to make this conference possible. After these few remarks, it is now my singular honor to once again welcome you, honorable guest of honor, and all distinguished guests in this conference. Asanteni sana.
Thank you very much, Dr. Akida. It goes to show the important role and work that ESRF does here in Tanzania. And because this meeting is very, very important, we on Twitter, we are streaming live. Later on, we're going to get some questions for those who are outside Tanzania or within Tanzania, asking us some questions to the panel's discussions that are going to be going on. If you're on Twitter, the hashtag is Stockholm Statement TZ. If you are from the US, it's TZ. You know, and the other hashtag is hashtag industrial growth. So we are streaming live, and this is a very important conference. So with that, can I please welcome Her Excellency the Ambassador Katarina Rangnet to give a welcome statement. Karibu.
Thank you. Honorable Dr. Philip Mpango, Minister of Finance and Planning, Professor Adolf Makenda, PS, Ministry of Foreign Affairs and East Africa, Mr. Philemon Luhanjo, the Chair of ESRF, Dr. Tausi Kida, Professor Joseph Stiglitz, Professor Sabina Alkaya, Professor Kaushik Basu, ambassadors, representative of other representative of Tanzania government, distinguished scholars, guests, warmly welcome. Good morning to you all. Ladies and gentlemen, it is with very great pleasure and excitement that I welcome you to this conference on a dialogue on the Stockholm Statement for Inclusive Development in Tanzania. I'm very, very pleased to have been able to organize this conference together with the government of Tanzania and the ESRF. Our objective and hope for this conference is to help supporting a public debate on economic policy choices for inclusive development in Tanzania, and to start a dialogue for a new reference framework after the Washington Consensus. I'm very, very pleased and honored to be here in the presence of our distinguished guests, the Nobel laureate Professors Joseph Stiglitz, Professor Sabina El-Khair, Director of Oxford Poverty and Human Development Initiative, Professor Kaushik Basu, former Chief Economist of the World Bank. Since the conference is framed by the Stockholm Statement, let me start by introducing the statement and its 8 principles. The Stockholm Statement was developed following a conference in Stockholm 2016, organized and hosted by the Swedish International Development Corporation agency, SIDA. And in order to explain the background of the statement, we have prepared a short film that I would like to show you. In the film, you will see some of the economists behind the statement explaining the principle of the statement. The film is 7 minutes, and afterwards I'll have another 3 minutes of speech. So please bear with me. Warmly welcome, and please start showing the film.
The Stockholm Statement is a coherent set of principles on which 13 prominent development economists agree. A key message is that if the international community works together, technological progress can be translated into progress in well-being for all, including the most deprived.
This need for action and a new development paradigm is what the Stockholm Statement is about. SIDA was very honored when asked to co-host this event that led up to the Stockholm Statement, and this new paradigm designed by an eminent group of professors, chief economists and Nobel laureates.
We felt that not only were lots of critical pieces of advice not there in the Washington Consensus of 1989, but some of our contemporary problems are rooted in the fact of the inadequacy and poor statement of that consensus. So we wanted to get together 13 people and fairly diverse people and bring together a set of advice which is in some ways much more balanced, much more based on contemporary research, and that's what we were doing.
For me, it gives hope if economists would come together in a new way after the 2008 crisis, after the Sustainable Development Goals, now that we know the importance of multidimensionality, now that we know that phenomena are interconnected and we need econometric techniques to look at that, now that we know that people's preferences are not fixed and consistent, now that we have neuroeconomics.
The realization that human beings are not always rational, the realization that markets are not always efficient, led to a far more nuanced statement that we saw in Stockholm.
You can think of what we were trying to do is broaden the objectives, not just GDP, and that was one of the explicit statements.
Right. That's right.
Including inequality, concern about the environment, global climate change, and broadening the instruments, a new perspective on the mechanisms, the participants, the governance of development.
Another part which is common to many of the actors was the focus on gender and the importance of women's voices, women's agency, women's leadership at all levels of development, that in a sense organically can bring a different perspective, and it certainly brings a kind of equity. And it's too easy to leave out that intra-household equity and focus only on the larger distributions of households. And so putting gender explicitly in the Stockholm Statement, I think, was an important and a very deliberate move to do.
And we were also especially sensitive, all of us, to the inequality situation. And Joe has written extensively on that. But one of the things was that just allowing markets to function, even if it does well for the markets, can be disastrous for income distribution, and that can loop back and come in and begin to affect the markets. So bringing that additional dimension in was very important to the statement that we made.
The key instruments, if you like, for economic development must be a combination of markets, communities, and government, right? And the state, if you like, more broadly. And in that sense, those three instruments need to work symbiotically in the pursuit of inclusive growth and development. In certain instances, you may find that markets are more important than the state, but in other instances, communities may be more important than market forces, if you like, in pursuing inclusive growth and development. As long as that open architecture with those three, if you like, actors are present, right? Markets, government, and communities are all active and activated in the process of economic development, then the idea is that the pursuit of inclusivity is far more easily attainable.
In the older development paradigm, the role of the state was limited to balance budget and control inflation. Everything else was left to the market. The new paradigm stresses the importance of balancing the role of the state, the market, and the communities.
One of the principles is that there has to be dialogue. There has to be active participation of society in the development project.
What we try and do is, in thinking about GDP not being an end in itself, in thinking about economic development and growth being inclusive, the importance of the environment, the relevance, for example, of norms and behaviors in economic development all come to the fore in this broad framework.
The Stockholm Statement is not a blueprint for policy. The Stockholm Statement is a set of principles that we hope can help frame country-level policies in developing and in developed countries.
One of the core messages in the statement is that the process of economic growth and development can be, if one likes, messy, and it can have unintended consequences, particularly unintended consequences on marginalized groups, on the poor, and so on. Then the key message for policymakers is to design ex ante policies and regulatory frameworks that prevent those excesses.
Our hope is that these principles, you might say, is a beginning of a dialogue, a beginning of a discussion. And as people look at these principles, they'll say, here are things that we forgot about. Here are things that are really important. Here are things they forgot about that ought to be included.
There was a lot of movements together of these newly independent countries, the leaders talking to one another. That somehow has been lost, and it's been left to rich countries to do the policy coordination. So one of the things, hopefully, is that individual countries will take away lessons, but there's also for them to act together. And there's a lot which is a collective interest of the developing countries, that they will be able to formulate those better among themselves and do a little bit of dictating back to rich countries, which has usually been a one-way flow.
I think these are spaces of creativity, and the principles hopefully can create this mobilization of consensus, that these are the values that we stand for and that we want to find new ways to address that are different in our different situations, but that can be done in a very practical way. And my hope is that these principles will be strengthened where they already exist.
What I'm hopeful is that with the meeting in Tanzania, where the SIDA, the Swedish organization, is involved, which had hosted us, we will be able to flesh out some ideas which are more for the collective of developing countries, emerging economies, for them to reflect their interest and not the Washington view of their interest. We have done a little bit of that, but there's scope for more.
After having seen this short film, I would just like to highlight two aspects, and this is also to explain why Sweden has taken a role in organizing this event and building up to the Stockholm Statement. Firstly, the combination of perspectives and hence the holistic view on development. We have finally understood that solving one thing does not automatically solve all other things. There is no invisible hand, and things do not happen automatically. Development is not only about GDP growth, but more importantly about improved well-being for all, and about the respect for human rights. This holistic view on development is also reflected in the 2030 Agenda, with its focus on social, economic, and environmental sustainability, which Sweden and Tanzania are both strongly committed to. But this holistic approach makes policymaking much, much harder. By hosting the Stockholm Statement event, Sweden wanted to facilitate policymaking with a holistic view on development. Secondly, the aspect of balancing state, market, and community. A few words on the Swedish model. One of the reasons Sweden offered to host the development of the event that became the Stockholm Statement was, of course, the belief in the main approach to social and economic development that Sweden has chosen, known as the Swedish model, or Nordic model, since I see quite a few of my Nordic colleagues here. The Swedish/Nordic model is a strategy for inclusive growth building on collaboration between the state, market, and communities through social dialogue, a flexible labor market, universal welfare, and economic policies that promotes openness and stability and support a dynamic business sector. It is also a model where gender equality and women's rights are fundamental. Key to its success is trust and ongoing dialogue. To this end, the current Swedish Prime Minister has, together with the ILO and OECD, initiated a global deal, a global partnership and platform for dialogue to support decent work and inclusive growth. I believe that inclusive, sustainable growth and the progression to a fair industrialization with decent job creation, which benefit all citizens, regardless of age, gender, ethnicity, religion, is the foundation for sustainable development and poverty reduction. Do not misunderstand me. I do not say that the model is without challenges. Of course, there are challenges, but I do believe there are some core principles and structures that can be of inspiration to Tanzania and other countries when assessing approaches for inclusive economic development. Now, briefly turning to the Tanzanian context. I think it is important that we recognize that, according to available statistics, Tanzania has had a positive development, both when it comes to declining poverty and a high level of growth. These positive developments should be further analyzed and serve as a basis to build on and further accelerate growth in the continued struggle against poverty and inequalities. I hope that the conference today will provide such an opportunity and that it will serve as a foundation for a discussion about economic development and policy making in Tanzania. Once again, I want to welcome you, and I'm looking forward to a very interesting discussion today. Nobel laureate Professor Joseph Stiglitz, Professor Sabina El-Khair, Professor Kaushik Basu. You have come here to Dar es Salaam to discuss the specific opportunities and challenges Tanzania is facing in the strive towards becoming a middle-income country with shared prosperity, using the principles of Stockholm Statement as a frame. I sincerely hope that this will spark a discussion and future debate, and I also look forward to a discussion that will hopefully feed into something forward-looking like a Dar es Salaam statement. Thanks again. Thanks again to the Ministry of Finance and Planning for organizing this. Thank you again, ESRF, for co-hosting, and thank you to the embassy staff for this. Tausikida, you've been also great in planning and organizing this. Thank you so much, and warmly welcome to the conference.
Thank you, Your Excellency. I think the clip was very enlightening, and the key word is balancing. We need to balance. I thought my handwriting was bad. My wife says it's chicken feed, but when I read something here, it's not industrial growth, it's inclusive growth. It doesn't mean I can't see, I can see very well. So the hashtag is inclusive growth, for one, and the other one is Stockholm Statement TZ. With that, let me welcome the chairman of the Board of Trustees of ESRF to give his welcome remarks, and also welcome the guest of honor. Karibu.
Honorable Dr. Philip Mpango, Minister of Finance and Planning and Member of Parliament. Her Excellency Katarina Rengdit, Ambassador accredited to Tanzania, Swedish Ambassador accredited to Tanzania. Ms. Natalia Bott, Country Director, UNDP. Distinguished researchers and scholars, representatives from the government of the United Republic of Tanzania, members of the diplomatic corps and international bodies, members of the civil society present, of society organizations present, distinguished invited guests, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. From the very outset, let me take this rare opportunity on behalf of the Economic and Social Research Foundation Board of Trustees and Management to welcome you, Honorable Minister of Finance and Planning, Dr. Philip Mpango, and the distinguished invited guests to this 7th annual conference hosted by the Economic and Social Research Foundation in collaboration with the Embassy of Sweden. Kindly allow me to pay a glowing gratitude to the Embassy of Sweden and the ambassador in particular for agreeing to co-host this year's conference with the Economic and Social Research Foundation, SRF. The 7th SRF annual conference with the theme Equitable Growth and Human Development and Resource-Based Economy. Dialogue on Stockholm Statement for Tanzania brings together scholars, researchers, policy actors, and development partners to augment our national efforts of maximizing benefits from our natural resources for inclusive growth and human development. Despite the diverse and conflicting engagements of our distinguished guests, we are pleased to note that many of you did accept our invitation and hence have allocated time to attend and be part of this very important conference. We therefore thank you most sincerely for your support. Honorable guests of honor and distinguished participants, at this juncture, the SRF Board of Trustees for the collaboration with SRF since its inception. The government has been in close collaboration with the SRF in addressing the ever-increasing and dynamic development challenges facing the country. However, honorable guest of honor, I would like to say that this morning, my singular role this morning, guest of honor, is to welcome you to our conference, and thereafter invite you to the podium to provide your remarks as part of the official opening of this conference. However, before I do that, let me shed some light on the important work that has been done by the Foundation. SRF has worked hand in hand with the policy actors in articulating national development agenda, such as coordinating the development of the Tanzanian Vision 2025 in 1998 through 2000, and reviewing the same 10 years after its implementation, reviewing Zanzibar Vision 2020, several sectoral policies and strategies, and reviewing international frameworks, such as post-2015 Millennium Development Goals, MDGs. The Foundation also did conduct a review of the first 5-year development plan, 2011-12 through 2015-16, and participated in the formulation of the second 5-year development plan, 2016-17 through 2020-21. At the regional level, the Foundation has worked with a number of regions in developing the investment guides, in helping identify priority investment areas. Honorable guest of honor, inequality and poverty are key issues in the country's development agenda to be addressed through generating high and inclusive economic growth in Tanzania. It is against this backdrop that the Foundation, in collaboration with the Embassy of Sweden in Tanzania, has organized this conference with a theme of equitable growth and Human Development and Resource-Based Economy, Tanzania, Dialogue of the Stockholm Statement for Tanzania. The thrust of this conference is to discuss and critically, I emphasize, to discuss and critically analyze the contents of the Stockholm Statement. And hopefully, at the end, come up with a Dar es Salaam statement. Whether it's a statement or conventional, I don't know. It will be a statement, hopefully. Honorable guest of honor, it is once again my distinct pleasure to welcome all the great thinkers and seasoned resource persons gathered here today. It is my hope that all policy actors present will participate actively and benefit immensely from the presence of experienced and renowned scholars such as Professor Joseph Stiglitz, Professor Kaushik Basu, and Professor Sabina Alkai, who have been instrumental in the formulation of the Stockholm Statement. So we are going to benefit because we have the authors of the statement. We have prepared your questions and they will be answered. With this, I'm not quite sure, few remarks. It is now my singular honor and privilege to welcome our Honorable Minister, Dr. Philip Mpango, to make his remarks. Mr. Minister, welcome.
Our host, Mr. Philemon Luhanjo, former Chief Secretary and current Chairperson of the Board of Trustees of ESRF, Her Excellency Katarina Ragnit, the Ambassador of Sweden to Tanzania, Dr. Tausi Kida, Executive Director, ESRF, our distinguished guests, Professor Joseph Stiglitz, Nobel laureate, Professor, Columbia University, and former Chief Economist of the World Bank, Professor Sabina Alkir, Director of the Poverty and Human Development Initiative, Oxford University, Professor Kaushik Basu, Professor of Economics, Cornell University, and also former Chief Economist of the World Bank Group, Professor Adolf Mkenda, Permanent Secretary, Minister of Foreign Affairs and East African Cooperation, Permanent Secretaries and other senior government officials present, Excellencies, Ambassadors, and representatives of international organizations. I do recognize my friend from the World Bank, UNDP as well, and others. Distinguished experts and researchers. I saw my old friend Mark Woods, Sam Wangwe, who is also, by the way, for those who do not know, the founder of ESRF and the first executive director of ESRF, the media fraternity, dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, a very good morning to you all. It is a great honor and privilege for me to be standing here this morning to grace the occasion of the Economic and Social Research Foundation's 7th annual conference on behalf of the Prime Minister of the United Republic of Tanzania, Honorable Kassim Majaliwa, Member of Parliament, in the presence of such a distinguished audience that includes 2 former chief economists of the World Bank Group. This is a very rare opportunity and an honor to our country. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, allow me to welcome you all to this unique conference and extend a proudly Tanzanian karibu to all our foreign delegates and participants to beautiful Tanzania, the cradle of mankind and the land of Kilimanjaro and the spicy islands of Zanzibar. Please feel at home away from home. I wish also to congratulate the organizers of this conference in advance for excellent arrangements and bringing together all these great minds to digest a very important policy agenda on equitable growth and human development in a resource-based economy, dialogue on the Stockholm Statement for Tanzania. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, let me confess that I'm excited by the theme of the conference. I'm excited because ever since I was nominated to be a member of Parliament and minister responsible for finance and planning, I've had to grapple with 3 recurring questions from parliamentarians, the media, and members of the general public. And the first question has been, why is it that Tanzania remains poor when in fact it is, literally speaking, endowed with everything to make it happy? And for those who are not familiar with Tanzania, let me just say that Tanzania is a country with 54 million people, of which 60% are young people, residing in the 31st largest country in the world. And it is really large, 945,090 square kilometers. It has 44 hectares of arable land, which offers enormous potential to be the food basket of the Great Lakes region and the main source of raw materials for agro-industry. It has a strategic geographical location which offers a natural economic hub and gateway to the sea for 5 landlocked countries, as well as the shortest route to the sea for Eastern DRC. 62,500 square meters are covered by water, including the Great Lakes, Victoria, Tanganyika, Rukwa, Nyasa, and many rivers, all with ample fishery resources and hydropower potential. We also have abundant mineral wealth ranging from gold, diamonds, tanzanite, ruby, nickel, tin, iron ore, coal, uranium, name it, natural gas, helium. It is also a tourist paradise with 1,400 kilometers of coastline, many national parks with all kinds of wildlife. It is also an island of peace and political stability, free from ethnic fragmentation, and maintained very good friends, both bilateral and multilateral. I can go on and on. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, However, in the eyes of the majority of Tanzanians, the exploitation of natural resource wealth and other potentials has typically left ordinary Tanzanian citizens as bystanders. Only a few benefit from the natural resource wealth I have just sketched. And in my view, the reasons for this outcome are many, including technology and skills gap, where, for instance, artisanal miners are no match to the mighty advanced technology used by large-scale mining companies. But there is also lack of financial capital, which constrains exploitation of natural resources for shared benefit. Corruption and rent-seeking behavior is also a factor. Other reasons include lack of access to global markets, weak links between the mining and the mainstay of the economy, namely agriculture, fisheries, and livestock. It is also my strong view that lack of a strong government and smart policies are a significant part of the missing link between abundant natural resources coexisting side by side with poverty and elusive inclusive growth. Excellencies and distinguished scholars, the second question stems from the fact that Tanzania has sustained robust macroeconomic performance record over the past 2 decades, with real GDP growth averaging 6.5% to become among the top 10 fastest growing economies in Africa. Yet this high growth has not been felt in terms of significant improvement in the lives of ordinary citizens. The poverty reduction rate has simply not been commensurate with the high growth of the economy. And this outcome has in turn led to a number of follow-up questions in search of answers to what has gone wrong. And these are really around a re-examination of the sources and quality of this growth, adequacy of the quantum of growth in net terms, that is taking into account population growth, duration of growth, its spatial distribution, particularly looking at the urban-rural dichotomy and regional dimensions, degree of participation in the fastest growing sectors, as well as linkages between the main sectors of the economy and the most dynamic ones. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the third question. This has been, what options are there for Tanzania going forward? At this juncture, I do not wish to jump the queue into the next discussion. I will hold back my humble views on this question until I hear and digest the wisdom of my peers. However, I wish to reaffirm the commitment of President Magufuli's administration to push for sustaining higher and inclusive growth. Our strategy as a government is broadly outlined in the second 5-year National Development Plan, 2016-17 to 2020-2021, which goes by the theme, Nurturing Industrialization for Economic Transformation and Human Development. Well, in this plan,